Tekken is a fairly complex game with an incredibly high skill ceiling that is almost impossible for anyone to reach. This video is meant for beginner to intermediate levels, but there may be some useful insights for more advanced players, and obviously, I don't mean to say that all these skills are going to be mastered early on, but it's good to be aware of these things as they'll put you in a better direction when it comes to learning Tekken. So without further ado, here are 5 things I wish I learned or paid more attention to earlier in Tekken. Movement is such a huge part of controlling any matchup in Tekken. Surprisingly enough, I don't see many online players with good movement, and it's usually pretty easy for me to control space and punish accordingly. Though these few times where I encounter someone with good movement, it becomes an entirely different game. Even if they're not necessarily proficient in other areas, the match just organically starts to feel more competitive and interesting as both players start to utilize their movements to try to control the pacing and momentum of the match. I cannot stress enough how important it is to learn how to backdash and the major impact it has on your gameplay. There are plenty of tutorials around, but I'll give you a quick rundown of how to backdash. You start with your first backdash, which you get for free by inputting back, and after that you want to input down back, neutral back, and down back, neutral back, and keep repeating until you get the hang of it and until it starts to look more and more natural and quicker. 15 minutes of daily Korean backdash practice and you should get the hang of it in a couple of weeks. Of course, you want your backdash to be clean, so make sure you let your backdash animation finish before you cancel it and do another one. No matter how clean you think your backdash is, there's always room for improvement. And make sure that you practice on both sides. You don't want to lose a match or get sent to losers brackets just because you were on the other side of the screen. Learn and get into the habit of using practice mode the right way. And what I mean by that is when you get mauled by a Lei or a Zafina online, or offline for that matter, at some point you want to retreat back to practice mode and have the CPU repeat whatever move or string you're having trouble against using the repeat action feature. And the way you do that is you go to CPU opponent action and select repeat action, and on the repeat action tabs, hit record and have the CPU repeat whatever move you're having trouble with. And what I'd recommend is have the CPU do a 1 jab into whatever move or string you're having trouble with. And after blocking the 1 jab, which puts you at -1, you may experiment which side can you sidestep, when to duck, and generally just try to find all the weaknesses you can find with that move or string. This process is the rudimentary procedure known as labbing characters, which can be admittedly boring, but it's incredibly useful and will boost your Tekken matchup knowledge by a long shot. And this is the knowledge that can generally be carried out to the next installments of Tekken, since Tekken is a legacy game where more experienced and well-researched players will almost always have the upper hand. Now this is a small one, but just by knowing that you can buffer buttons in this game, you can overcome a small part of the execution barrier by learning how to button buffer. Say I want to do Kazuya's full crouch down forward 3+4 after doing a generic 4. Instead of letting go of the 4 and attempting to do it by pressing 3+4, I can just keep my finger on the 4 and just do the down forward +3, and it will register as down forward 3+4, since I was already holding the 4 even after I did the generic 4. There aren't really any consequences to holding buttons in this game. So the way you can use holding buttons in this game is obviously by knowing that you can button buffer, which is very useful, and I really recommend using that skill. The importance of the neutral and the 1 jab. If you ask any Tekken pro, they will always tell you that the neutral is more important to be proficient at first before moving on to try to maximize your combo potential. The 1 jab, which is +1 on block and is universal for all characters, and your generic 13 frame mid poke, generally a down forward 1, are incredibly important in locking down and limiting the options of your opponent. And combined with good movement, you can win matches just by using the 1 jab, your down forward 1, and your choice of a quick punisher depending on what your character can do, without any combos needed. And that's what many like about Tekken. Despite Tekken being such a combo dependent game, it's also just as dependent on the neutral. which is why we can tolerate very high damage combos being present in the game. Because we know that there's always an option that helps you avoid being put in a situation where you eat a high damage combo. Punishment. Namely, block punishment and whiff punishment. Both are separate skills that are developed over time. Block punishment is related to matchup knowledge, and whiff punishment is tied to spacing and movement and reactions. Of course, you must learn your punishers in order to use these skills efficiently. Every character's quickest punisher is the 10-frame jab. Some characters like Kazuya have an 11-frame punisher. Some don't because it's replaced by an 11-frame counter hit tool. You must know all of your punishers from 10 to 18 frames, and thanks to the Tekken team giving us a comprehensive in-game frame data system, albeit for the small price of $4, you're able to avoid having to look up the frames yourself, and you can just view your frames in-game as you practice. And of course, the punishment training is an absolutely incredible tool that teaches players the concept of block punishment, and just by having that available to you in-game, it saved me a lot of time of all the explanation that I would have had to do if it weren't there. So I can just focus on explaining whiff punishment to you right now, which is tied to the previous skills that I mentioned in the video, especially movement, which on top of side steps is the main cause of creating whiffs, which in turn leaves your opponent hanging in their own recovery frames, giving you time to punish their recklessness, and depending on how much you've practiced and how comfortable you've become using your character, you can punish with either a regular, I'll take what I can get kind of punish, or I have another video coming up listing more things that can be useful to you during the process of learning Tekken. If you learned something or found this video to be helpful, then go ahead and support the channel by liking and subscribing. It will help me keep making more content, and you won't miss future videos that may be useful or simply entertaining for that matter. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day.